After we finished moving into our new single-family home, another moving truck suddenly stopped in front of our house. My husband said something unbelievable. "From today, my parents will be living with us too." "What?" I exclaimed. My in-law added, "If you oppose, such a daughter-in-law should get divorced." I burst out laughing when I heard this. We might as well be divorced already, right? This is the story of when I left my husband and his family right after we moved into our new home. My name is Kelly, and I am a housewife in my 30s. I married Dominic 5 years ago, and our son is now 4 years old. I quit my job once I got married, but I went back to work when our son turned 4. Now, I work full-time on weekdays. When I first met my husband, he was kind and laid back, a bit oblivious, but I thought that was part of his charm. Most importantly, I was attracted to the fact that he always put me first, which led me to marry him. However, I later realized that my compatibility with my in-laws was far from good. They were people who cared too much about appearances, always thinking unilaterally without considering others. The first sign of trouble was during the wedding preparations. They wanted a grand ceremony because he was the eldest son. I wanted a modest wedding with only close friends and family, but they complained it would be embarrassing and not fitting for their family status. Let me make it clear, my husband's family was not of high status. His father was a retired office worker, and his mother was a housewife. They had always lived in rented houses, not large ones, yet they seemed to want to maintain appearances. In the end, they said, "We will cover the costs," and went ahead to book a wedding venue they knew without consulting us. I didn't want to start a conflict before getting married, so I went along with my in-laws' wishes for a grand wedding reception. However, the costs burdened by the groom's side ended up being solely on my family. It was the same when I was in labor. My mother-in-law arrived at the hospital and immediately said, "What? Not born yet? I thought since the labor started, the baby would be here. I came all this way for nothing. How tedious." Then she continued to make irrelevant small talk beside my bed, despite my pain. She didn't care and kept talking. "Hey, are you listening, Kelly?" During this time, my husband did nothing but watch, not offering any support. I used to like my husband's laid-back nature, but now it seemed more like insensitivity or even obliviousness, assuming his parents' behavior was normal. The inconsiderate actions of my mother-in-law and father-in-law continued even after giving birth. Despite it being shortly after birth, they insisted on celebrating at our house late into the night, demanding, "Hey, prepare some snacks." Even when my son cried, nobody attempted to soothe him. Because of this, I've always felt uncomfortable around my in-laws, trying to keep our interactions to a minimum. However, a particular situation led us to become deeply involved with my in-laws. We were living in a rental apartment, but as our son grew, we started thinking about buying a new single-family home. Building a house meant we had to look for land, choose a construction company, and decide on the interior design, requiring many meetings. Since we both worked, it was difficult to schedule meetings during weekdays, so we always arranged them on weekends. However, it was hard to have long meetings with our son present, so he was often taken care of by my parents who lived nearby. We had planned another meeting for the next day, but my mother called to say she had caught a cold and didn't want to risk passing it to my son, so she couldn't take care of him. I had to decide whether to cancel the meeting or take my son with me, and I consulted my husband about it. He suggested, why not leave him with my parents for once? I didn't want to rely on my in-laws, but without considering my opinion, my husband started calling them. "Hey, it's me. Can you take care of our son for the day tomorrow? I'll bring some souvenirs," he said. I told him, "That's sudden," but my oblivious husband just replied, "They said it's okay," and hung up the phone. I had a bad feeling about this. The next day, we took our son to my in-laws in the morning before heading to the meeting. When we returned, I brought some sweets that my in-laws liked, hoping to leave quickly. But as expected, I got caught up. "Building a house, are you?" "What kind of house is it?" my father-in-law asked. "A system kitchen, huh? Young people these days have it easy," my mother-in-law added with a string. Then my husband said, "I've left everything about the kitchen up to Kelly." My mother-in-law, looking at me, said, "Oh, I'd love to use a nice kitchen myself." So I said with a smile, why don't you consider remodeling your kitchen then? She replied, as if we have the money for that. I'd rather have you do it as a filial duty. Watching this, my husband carelessly said, well, once our house is finished, you should come and see. You can even use it if you want. I didn't like the idea of someone else using my kitchen. After being asked all sorts of detailed questions about the new house for 2 hours, I was finally free. On our way home, I felt anxious and checked in with my husband. Hey, your parents seemed interested in our house. We're not going to live with them, right? I asked. He replied, it's our family's home. I told you Kelly can do whatever she likes with the kitchen. So I believed him. From that day, my in-laws started offering to take care of our son during our meetings. While it was appreciated, they always ended up giving unsolicited advice about the house. My father-in-law would say, show me the blueprints, and ask, how big is the bath? How spacious is the guest room? He even suggested, you should install handrails at the entrance for when you get older. My mother-in-law would say, this room should be a guest room, it's more comfortable, and, how high is the kitchen counter? When I told her, she'd say, oh, that's inconvenient for me. When she suggested, you should make it lower, I couldn't help but respond, I made it at a height that's convenient for me. Then my father-in-law said, it's not just you using it. Dominic will live there too, so you have to consider everyone's convenience, as if we were designing the house to accommodate occasional visitors. Looking to my husband for support, he simply accepted their words without any objection. I wondered whose house we were building every time we had such exchanges. I grew tired and suggested to my husband, can we stop leaving our son with your parents? I'm troubled by their constant interference with the new house. He dismissed it, saying, it's helpful that they take care of our son. Just put up with a few complaints. That's what wives do. I pressed on, but your parents are pushing their opinions too much. It's like they're planning to live there themselves. We're not going to live together, right? My husband roughly snapped back, I told you, it's our family's home. Stop nagging or let's just get a divorce. Divorce? What is he even saying? I thought. The intrusion about the new house started with his parents, yet it ended up being about our divorce. From that day, my husband's threats of divorce increased every time something happened. On another day, after a meeting, my in-laws came to our house and started discussing the new house again. Hey, shouldn't you change the location of the bath? My father-in-law started. I called, thinking he'd surely answer, but he didn't pick up. Maybe he's still enjoying himself with everyone. I'll try calling again later, I thought. I tried calling every 50 minutes, but still no answer. Worried, I contacted my mother-in-law to check on him. Hello, Karen. You must be tired. I'm sorry we went on this trip without you. We told Marcus we'd prefer you to be with us, but he insisted, my mother-in-law said. I knew from Marcus that his mother used to be a strict teacher, but now she's much gentler and always cares about how busy I am. Never mind. We're so busy at the company this year that I couldn't make time. I'll make it up to you next year, okay? Oh, don't worry about it, she replied kindly. Just having this wonderful trip as a gift from you is more than enough for us. Her words, warm like a smile, seemed strange to me. Wait, a gift? I asked, confused by the term. She seemed surprised by my question. Oh, isn't it? Marcus told us this trip was fully paid for by you since you couldn't join. I couldn't help but shout in surprise over the phone, realizing I didn't know anything. For my reaction, my mother-in-law quickly explained, isn't this the trip Karen arranged? Marcus paid for everything with Karen's card, so I thought it was from you. The trip included Marcus's parents and his sister's family, 6 people in total. The flight alone cost about $2,000 per person minimum, and with other expenses, it easily exceeded $22,000. It's outrageous to use such a large sum without asking me, especially since I usually cover living expenses. Marcus doesn't gamble or smoke, so his salary should be intact. He earns enough to afford such expenses, yet. As he continued not answering my calls, my anger started to boil. Sensing my upset, my mother-in-law spoke with concern. Karen, are you okay? We'll pay back every penny. Marcus insisted on covering everything, which seemed odd. My husband and I decided to pay you back later. We miss you and planned to visit you. Thinking the trip was based on a terrible plan, she continued to comfort me. You're not at fault. It's also your 60-second celebration, so please use that money for your enjoyment. I'll get Marcus to pay for it. But could you tell me more about the church's planning? I was trying to figure out what Marcus was up to when I realized this trip must have been planned months ago without me knowing. At that moment, I started to doubt him. Then, my mother-in-law revealed a shocking fact. The trip was suggested by Marcus's sister and her husband. Surprisingly, it was Marcus's sister and her husband, who always criticized me, who initiated the trip. Marcus's brother-in-law, an executive at a company competing with mine, looked down on me for being a female CEO. Because of his pride, Marcus never stood up to his sister. The sight of Marcus showing respect to someone other than myself must have caught my sister-in-law's attention. Even though she has always controlled Marcus, I couldn't stand the fact that she got offended by Marcus just being slightly nice to someone else. With their strong sense of rivalry, my sister-in-law and her husband disliked me, and I always tried to avoid them as much as possible. This couple, always competitive and disliking me, possibly planned this trip to create a rift and exclude me, using Marcus as their source of money. I'm so sorry, I didn't know anything. Marcus told me you were busy and asked us not to contact you directly, my mother-in-law said. If my in-laws and I were to communicate, it would have exposed the plan and potentially caused a rift in our marriage. To prevent this, Marcus had already advised his parents not to reach out to me because of my busy schedule. His words were absolute to them, and they decided to follow his advice and planned to express their gratitude. When they returned, my father-in-law suddenly asked, Karen, did you give Marcus a card or something? He was paying with a gold card I've never seen before. His urgent tone confirmed my suspicions. The moment he mentioned the gold card, I checked my safe and found that the gold card he mentioned was missing. This card is crucial for our company, and only Marcus and I knew the safe password. I never thought Marcus would steal from the company, but it was clear he had taken the card. As the finance manager, he could easily change the records. Realizing he was misusing company funds, my anger grew, and I told my in-laws what had happened. They turned pale with shock. What should we do? Are we part of this theft? We'll go back with Marcus immediately. We're as guilty as he is, even if we didn't know, my mother-in-law panicked. My father-in-law, who always takes his responsibilities seriously, agreed. We'll accept our punishment once we're back. I shook my head, disagreeing. No need for that. You were just tricked by Marcus, you're not at fault. But I can't let Marcus and his sister's family get away with this. We don't need punishment, but could you help me with something? I continued. I ignored Marcus's actions until now, and that's my fault. He's taken me for granted, thinking he can just apologize and get away with it. This isn't just a personal problem, it's about the company. We need to teach him a lesson. All right, we'll do whatever we can to help, they responded. So, we began planning how to get back at Marcus. I was surprised by my cleverness, but my love for Marcus had turned into hatred and anger. Initially, my in-laws were hesitant about this harsh plan, but as parents, they finally decided to stand by me. Just as we were discussing this, Marcus unexpectedly called. I ended the call with my in-laws and picked up Marcus's call. What's up? We're enjoying a family-only trip, so what's this important talk about? Marcus's sarcastic tone irritated me even more. You took your time calling. Did you go a little wild, huh? He added. No way. Just having drinks at a nearby bar with mom and dad, he continued, but this confirmed he was lying. I had just spoken to his parents, and there was no noisy bar sound in the background. Besides, they had no reason to lie to me. He was probably out causing trouble with his sister's family. His words cooled my feelings for him completely. Oh. By the way, Marcus, you haven't been messing with the company's expenses, have you? His attitude changed instantly at my unexpected question. What's that all about? His tone, usually lighthearted, turned deadly serious. Was this his true nature? Seeing his attitude shift as if he now saw me as an enemy, I faced him with equal firmness. Just checking since there will be an audit at the company soon, I replied calmly. Are you suspecting me? His defensive reaction showed his guilt. I couldn't help but laugh at his poor response. What's wrong? I was just concerned, and you're talking about suspicion. Did you do something wrong? I pressed on. No, anyway, the house isn't in a mess when I get back, right? Marcus asked, realizing he was digging himself deeper. He suddenly changed the subject, but his actions only made him look more suspicious. I was almost impressed by his foolishness. Who knows? I've been busy with work too. Give me a break. I hate coming back to a dirty house with bugs. A wife is her husband's maid, disobey and it's divorce. Even our executive says that to his wife. Looks like I might have to do the same, right? You want that, so keep the house clean, he added. I had never seen him getting along with the executive. His current works were probably all his thoughts, but aware of his weaker position, he used the third person to express them. His patheticness made me sigh. Sure, I'll keep that in mind. There was no need to talk to him any longer. Marcus looked down on me, even embezzling company funds. Embezzlement is a serious crime, and I could take him to the police with no mercy, even for a spouse. But that alone wouldn't satisfy me. After ending the call with Marcus, the next day while I was busy preparing for the fashion show, I made a phone call to a certain place. Of course, Marcus bombarded me with calls. I noticed his calls late at night while I was out. Luckily, my secretary was driving, so I answered Marcus's call on speaker. You're late. What have you been doing? His voice was rougher than I'd ever heard, surprising both my secretary and me. What do you mean? I was working. Did you do something yesterday? I replied. Do something like what? Don't play dumb. Tell me the truth, Marcus demanded. Marcus was in complete panic, and in the background, I could hear several Australian men, and my sister-in-law and her husband confronting him. It sounded noisy. Something wrong? I asked. No, it's just Marcus, who had been blustering, suddenly began to stammer. He realized that admitting anything would put him in a very disadvantageous position. His odd behavior made me explain to him what was coming. Too bad, Marcus. You were supposed to be having a blast in Australia, but it seems your dream turned into a nightmare overnight, huh? But it's what you deserve for misusing someone else's money. You did something, didn't you? As he reacted weirdly, I revealed what I had done the day before. I contacted the president of the credit card company I was contracted with. Despite it being after hours, he agreed to help me due to our long-standing relationship. He immediately suspended the company's credit card. If a credit card is misused, the company doesn't have to pay the store, leaving the store at a loss. However, Marcus had arranged to pay the entire bill at checkout, so with the card blocked, he couldn't pay and was now being interrogated by the hotel receptionists. Marcus, Mom, and Dad have already checked out. The taxi I've reserved for them has left with them, so there's no one coming to pick you up, I said. My sister-in-law, who was cornered, bombarded Marcus, asking what to do next. Hearing this, Marcus panicked even more and directed his anger at me. How can you do this and think it's okay? Are you ready for a divorce? Go ahead. I'd rather not have a husband who steals from the company. I've already talked to a lawyer, and we're starting the divorce process, I told Marcus calmly. He was shaken by my calm reaction. I've ignored so much of what you've done, Marcus. There was a time when you supported my work, and I was grateful, but I've reached my limit. My patience is gone, I continued. That can't be, Marcus realized he was in a real crisis and let out a desperate cry. The receptionist kept demanding payment from Marcus and his group, who were now trapped in despair. None of them spoke Australian and were relying on a guide to communicate. I suggested switching the call to me. No one there speaks Australian, right? Let me talk to them for you. I'll help, I assured Marcus. He sounded relieved, thinking I had changed my mind. Without hesitation, he handed his phone to them. I spoke to the receptionists in Australia and explained the situation, and they quickly understood and seemed cooperative. To ease their worries, I also gave them my contact information, which my secretary noted down. After a friendly chat, they returned the phone to Marcus. What happened? Did you sort it out? Marcus asked anxiously. Yes, I've taken care of it. Now it's up to you guys, really, I replied. You're a lifesaver, Karen. I love you, he said gratefully, then hurried off, apparently called by the receptionists. Are you sure about this? It probably won't end well, my secretary asked. Perfect, right? It's ideal for them to see hell, I responded. An hour later, as expected, I received a barrage of calls again from Marcus. When I answered the call, Marcus was on the line, his voice full of distress. Karen, what's going on here? What is this place? He cried out and showed me through a video call the image of a slum area in Sydney, Australia. Marcus and his sister's family were there, looking miserable and stripped of their belongings. They had been taken to what's considered the most dangerous place in Australia, which was completely unexpected. When I was talking to the receptionist earlier, he had mentioned he was a big fan and promised to arrange a severe punishment, but I never thought he meant this place. I couldn't help but laugh at their predicament. Lucky you're still alive in Australia's most dangerous place. It's a miracle, really, I remarked. What? Wait, Karen, what's this about? Explain yourself and come help us right now, Marcus pleaded desperately. Since it was a video call, they could probably hear everything. Behind them, many homeless people were surrounding Marcus and his group, causing chaos. You guys were causing trouble for Karen. You reap what you sow. A time for reflection, added my in-laws, joining the call unexpectedly. Mom, Dad, what are you doing? Marcus was shocked. A friend of Karen flew us back in a private jet. We returned to the US, and Karen picked us up. We realized you were trying to set Karen up. We asked her to do as she pleases with you guys, they explained. As they said this, the onlookers behind them started confronting Marcus's sister and her husband. The people living in this rough area were ruthless. If you wore anything valuable, even women were not spared. They raised their voices while on the video call. In such a dangerous neighborhood, it's no surprise they became perfect targets. I addressed the crowd in Australia, loud enough for them to hear, telling them these men had been using my card illegally and had treated me horribly. I encouraged the locals to do as they pleased with Marcus and his group, and they eagerly agreed to give them a hard time. Suddenly, the call ended, probably because someone snatched the phone. After that, Marcus and his group were stuck living in the harsh conditions of the slum, treated poorly by the locals. Without money to return to the US, they were essentially trapped abroad. Later, I confirmed with the hotel receptionist that an acquaintance of his, who was a leader in that slum, had agreed to look after Marcus and his group in return for his help. I promised to treat him to some good liquor the next time and assured him not to worry. They made a deal to keep Marcus and his group safe from life-threatening situations. In return, I agreed to perform at that hotel, something I hadn't done in a long time. The receptionist mentioned that a live performance video of mine, the only one I ever released, was still his treasure. He invited me to stay at their hotel and sing for them, promising VIP treatment. Following this, I successfully got my revenge on Marcus and his group with the help of the men from the hotel. I also managed to sever ties with Marcus through a divorce. I felt refreshed and have been enjoying life with my in-laws. Marcus's sister and her husband were fired from their jobs for unexcused absences. Their phones were taken by the locals, leaving them without a way to contact anyone. My in-laws explained the situation well, so it didn't become a police matter, and no one seemed to care about them. Since then, I've been focusing on work and living a happy life. Occasionally, I call the receptionist to check on Marcus and his group. They're still living in tough conditions, but I don't feel sorry for them. I asked to spare their lives, and now I'm enjoying my life to the fullest. Thanks for watching. How did you find the story? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more awesome stories like this. Your feedback and support mean a lot.